Hello there, friends. Kellen with DBS Films here. We are currently filming our newest feature film, which is The Girl in Cabin 14. At least that is the working title for it before we go ahead and get it changed. That means we did not have time to do a podcast this week, so instead, we're going to be giving you a little bit of a throwback. It is a throwback to a scene by scene breakdown of The Girl in Cabin 13, part 1 and 2 this week. And if you haven't seen The Girl in Cabin 13 yet, it is absolutely free on Tubi. And it is the inspiration of the concept for our newest feature film. So be sure to take a look at it, let us know what you think, and wish us and everyone involved in the filming process the best of luck. Hey everybody, welcome to DBS Films Podcast. My name is Kellen. With me as always is my brother Brendan, and together we make movies with DBS Films. Before we get started, you can go ahead and take a look at The Girl in Cabin 13 online for free on Tubi. Also, our newest film, The Haunting of the Murder House, is up there as well. And Into the Forest. Be sure to take a look at our Discord channel. That is the place to be if you want to be part of the movie making process. If you want to be in these films, all of that fun stuff, because we make movies for our fans with our fans. So, hopping back into this, I think we kind of picked up, it was really us having a very, very basic screenplay concept idea, only two characters, incredibly limited, which kind of pulled away from a lot of the plot points. And I think you see it in the downbeats, specifically that we mentioned, like the gaslighting element to it, and how that can kind of be an issue for that. But with that being said, I think the thing that, we notice more than anything is how structurally sound The Girl in Cabin 13 is. So, do you want to talk about it real quick? How one of the biggest things that we end up getting from the movie making process is just a feel for the overall structure. And I mean, I think for the longest time, we just kind of didn't know what that actual structure was when it came to upbeats, downbeats, things like that. And I think while we do, execute poorly on some of them, more than anything, this movie is structured very well.
Yeah, and I think structure just comes from experience. But if you watch like a lot of bigger budget Hollywood movies, they're very well paced, and they have very good structure to them. And that's because they're hiring the best of the best for screenwriters. And I think that's the biggest problem I have with indie films. Like I love indie films. Anything made for under $1 million, I'm all about. Like I watch these things. I watch so many indie movies. I probably only watch indie movies at this point. The problem I see with a lot of indie movies is the pacing and the structure. It's just all over the place. The movie just moves in very weird directions. There's scenes in there that make no sense. The pacing's really, really bad, and I have to struggle to like continually watch it. And I'm giving these movies a chance. Usually, when I turn on something, I'll at least give it justice to finish it, unless it's really, really boring. So, I mean, that's rule number one: don't be boring. But I think doing 9 of these movies, understanding pacing and understanding structure, you kind of get like a sixth sense of like, all right, when you're writing the screenplay, there needs to be a pop scare here, or there needs to be a beat here, or we're going too fast. We got to give the audience just a second to breathe. Let's put a downbeat here, or this would be a good place to like build character and development. And I think the Morgan Estate and Devil in the Room are both very sloppy. There wasn't a lot of like structure to them. And I think we honestly took a step back because I would say Girl in Cabin 13 is very close to the Willow House. The Willow House had a very good structure to it. It was just a very bad production where the Morgan Estate and the Devil in the Room were just all over the place with this crazy dialogue stuff and just really kind of tanked those movies. So I think Girl in Cabin 13, the structure's there, the scenes are there, you know what you're getting into, but the quality of the production, which is that much better, which I think is the difference between, the Girl in Cabin 13, our earlier stuff was we have structure and now we're finally getting the foundation of actual production value in our movies.
Yep, completely agree. I mean, I think it's kind of getting that and adding the production on top of it. You need that structure, you need that chassis to kind of be able to build the movie on top of. So where we were picking up, Brad just had his king gaslighting scene where he was saying you're not seeing anything. Now we're doing a little bedroom scene where he's kind of saying I have a way to get followers, which I think is okay dialogue, not the best there. I think what saves us is we're weaving in the killer's POV, and then we get the knock at the door. So really, I mean, those are just kind of downbeat ones, get you from point A to point B. And I think the knock at the door is really the first building of this tension. And so really this is kind of where things are picking up at the door scene. And I think this was when we were writing it, we always knew it was kind of going to be like a 1-2, knock one, knock two, knock three, knock four, those things kind of back and forth. And then really what ended up happening is I think it establishes it nicely and you get the build up, nothing's there. Then you get a little bit of a downbeat and then kind of a crescendo of it. So you want to talk about the whole knocking sequence?
I'm not fine with the knocking sequence. It's repetitive. I don't think it adds anything. I would have rather had a scare where he like pops through the peephole, which we do later on in the movie, but I think would have been better here. But I think, we talk about structure and talk about pacing, and we really hit them hard with that Carl in the woods scene, and we just never really recovered from that. It's all these things are now below that scare in intensity, and it feels a little bit off. It feels like we're going backwards instead of forwards. When you want someone to watch this intro, the intro should be very intense, but then after that, you need to slowly build the momentum and the intensity of these scares, stack them properly. It's really easy to do that in hindsight, but when you're writing a script and you're filming it, it's difficult to do it unless you do like extensive pre-production. So this scene's all right. It gets him to meet Carl and his goons, but it doesn't really do it in an engaging way. Like they should really have been popping in there. Like I would have just had him go up to the door. No one's there. Turn to Sunny. No one's there. It must have been, the wind. Knock, knock, knock. Goes back in there. Looks out the hole. There's no one here. Turns back to Sunny. Sunny, like, I don't know what's going on. She's like, yeah, there had to be something. I heard the knock too. Turns back, looks in the peephole, and then Carl just smacks it or, pops in there with this scary mask. And that's the first time you see him face to face. That would have been much more impactful. We would have got a pop in there. I could use a stinger. But I think now they just like open the door and look outside. Oh no, he like grabs the fire poker and runs out there. And it's like a full stop. That's not that bad. It's not really scary though. So I mean, it's not as bad as I remembered. Which is probably what this movie is. I got to rewatch it because it's probably not as bad as I remember it. But yeah, no, I mean, it is. It's a scene. It gets it done. Doesn't really add anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of the. I think you are right in the sense of since the audience knows Carl's going to be out there, it's kind of there. You do get to reveal the goons. He does kind of walk in, walk back and forth. And I think we have the downbeat in there where it's kind of like, what do you mean you didn't tell me? And they can't go home, so we kind of cover those things. But once we see them and they basically are out there, we have a little bit of a dialogue back and forth. So they're kind of like, let's call Joe. None of the phones work for them to call anyone. So they're like, what are they looking at? Let me go out there. Let me see if they want any money or anything. And I mean, I think we kind of relied on them standing around a bunch. I mean, if you look at Carl, he just kind of turns his head back and forth. But how are your thoughts of how we use them? I think it was building tension. I think we obviously could have done it a lot better with different, elements to it since they're just kind of standing there when we cut back to them, just tilting their heads. But we kind of build the stakes that, they're clearly not moving. And we have Brad go out there and, negotiate for them.
Yeah, I didn't want them moving. Because I like that scene where they like reveal that they have knives and they split off. Like that's cool. And it's just kind of creepy that they're standing out there. Like, what would you do if there's a whole bunch of clowns just standing outside your house? It's creepy. I mean, we probably shouldn't have had you moving your head as much. That was like some feedback we got was like this dude's neck is like he just keeps twisting his head. The problem is like we just never got a lot of coverage of the three of them sitting outside that we could use. That was like creepy. I don't remember if some of it just wasn't good or if we just never got like long shots of that. But I remember like almost, I think I was like reversing the footage at some point just to try and make it look different. I mean, it gets the job done. It's not super creepy. And I think the whole thing is to just narrate to the audience, let the audience know like what the characters are thinking, what Brad and Sunny are thinking right now. They're like, oh, these people are outside. What do they want? Brad tries to go out there and negotiate with them. and then it becomes clear that like, all right, these people are going to try and kill us, and that's like, the punch that needs to happen way earlier in this movie, because I don't know what the timestamp is right now, but I mean, it just needs to be done much much sooner. I think we lost maybe 10 minutes on just useless fluff, which just goes back to, we need to make sure these movies are even faster. Like you think this movie's paced fast, it's got to be even quicker to get it to where it needs to go.
Yeah, because basically Brad goes out there, he's like, you want money, you can buy your camo shirt stuff, all that fun jazz. And then with that being said, we get what I think is one of the better scenes, which is the panic and sprints where, they're running up against there, someone slams into the door, they're going up against this, shut it. I think that was done really good. I think it's a good scare, and I think it's, a fear someone's basically always had, in the sense of, you're running to lock something, they're running to open it, and that can be pretty, intense. So I think we go from that slow down beat, and this is again at kind of 41 minutes is really when we're
It's
when
at 40. It's 41 minutes right now.
yeah, so 41 minutes is when we get
Oh,
to the knife breakup. So yeah, definitely, because
whew.
we see them at 30 minutes, so 10 minutes of them kind of standing outside tilting their head. So they run around, they split up there. I think, again, the sprint and the shuts are really good. I think it's, scare, scare, scare. It scares that are gonna happen, but they still get you.
Yeah, I mean, this needs like they should see the masked men outside this cabin at 20 minutes. They should spend 10 minutes like trying to figure out what's going on, or maybe 25, like start the masked men at 25 minutes. They spend 5 minutes trying to figure out what's going on with these guys, making preparations. And then the 30-minute mark of this movie is when they do this scene. I could easily cut out 10 minutes of this movie, but it just goes back to spend the 10 minutes of your movie on the climax or when the tension's like higher. Get your audience to this point, which is the hook point. There's actual masked men, there's tension. This is a good scene. You got to get your audience to this scene as quickly as possible. Obviously, the 30-minute marks where you really want to kind of, thrust them into the second act with a big scene, this is a great scene to do that. But we're at the 41-minute mark where we should be at the 30-minute mark. So you can cut out a lot of stuff. I think that would be, outside of us not developing the relationship and the fact that they like each other, and there's just a lot of gaslighting, I think we would have worked on that. I would have just cut 15 minutes off this movie and had this scene happen at the 25-minute mark. And then I think you honestly would have had just a much better movie. I think it would have been a much cleaner movie. And that just could be done by the stuff that I mentioned, just cutting a lot of the dialogue, cutting a lot of the scenes out, and just kind of moving them around to, number one, make more sense, and number two, just make a faster paced movie.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So we're picking up now. They're kind of scrambling. They try and, find a way out. That doesn't work. The power gets cut from them. So I think, kind of pretty classic downbeats and getting there. The next real big scene is basically the we want scene. So what ends up happening is they'll come to the door. They basically are like, hey, what do you guys want? And we have the we want the girl. So this kind of just establishes, clearly what they're after. This was a scene that we did practice with the slamming. I think it came out really good, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
This is a great scene. And you know why it's good? Because we did it in pre-production. We knew what we were trying to do. But I thought, the big question is like, what is the motivations of these masked men? And it becomes clear they don't want money, they don't want camo gear, they want the girl. And I think this should be in the 30-minute mark. All right, so I lied before. I think this should be the 30-minute mark, because now it's like, all right, look, if we had shown that Brad really loves Sonny earlier, then obviously, like, he's not going to give him the girl. He's in this situation, and they probably want to kill the girl or do something even worse. So it's this is a good hook point. It's a good scene. I thought, it's kind of like they realizing that this is a life or death situation. And from, the 30-minute mark where this should be, the next 15 minutes should be them trying to figure out how to get out of this situation until essentially one of the masked men, breaks in.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. This was a scene, the ones that we practice end up hitting, which is usually it. So we have them, they react a little bit, and then we go into our Joe scene. And again, Joe is by far the most liked character in this movie. We have him walking around. He can't hear anything because of the music on there. They're banging against the door to get his opinion or his attention, but they can't get him. He goes back there. Sadly, Joe meets his demise, which people are the most upset about with the pop scare. I love this whole sequence. I know some people were either saying it might be people usually either completely love this sequence or they kind of get upset and like it's so dumb, it's so cheesy. Because I will say it does ride the corny factor a little bit, but I love it. I think this is a great scene.
Yeah, this is the only scene in this entire movie that did not come out like I had in my head. And I don't know if it's the music that we chose to put in there, the bluegrass music, but it's super cheesy. It really is. Where I wanted it to be more like frustration based, like they're so close to getting help and he's just not seeing them, he's not hearing them. It's super frustrating for them and to be so close to like the finish line and not be able to get it. And I think it's probably the music now that I'm thinking about it. But distribution hated this scene. They really did. A lot of people I showed this to hated this scene. And we kind of made the same mistakes in Murder House. There's a lot of scenes in the Murder House that were just like a little bit cheesier. And I think the tone is something that, a lot of people are going to look for. And it's something that we're going to actively work on as filmmakers moving on, is to just really make sure that we are hitting the tone of these movies properly. If it's something like The Shapeshifter, which is fine, Shapeshifter is supposed to be like a Cabin in the Woods movie. It's supposed to be like an 80s, 70s upbeat horror movie. There's like smoking weed, there's drugs, there's alcohol, there's sexual innuendos. It's a more fun movie, but that is how it's done all the way throughout. Where this one, I think there's some dark stuff. I think the climax is really dark, and I think we nailed the tone of the climax. But you can't have this scene in there if you're going for a dark and gritty movie. And I don't think we hit that dark and gritty tone at all, but I think that this pulled people away from that so much that they got upset. And I think that's some of the feedback that I get from, the Murder House was that climax was really dark and gritty. There's a lot of dark and gritty scenes in there. And there was, scenes where we had a really good tone in there, but then we kind of ruin it by doing some of the cheesier upbeat stuff. I don't think you can mix that. I think you have to make a decision, as a director, your vision. You got to either pick upbeat, fun, slasher kind of horror movie, or very dark and gritty and realistic. And you can't mix them. You mix them, people will get mad. I think you can pick either direction and you'll make a good, you'll make enough people happy to like your movie. You mix them, you're going to tick people off. But I am interested to see the feedback from The Shapeshifter, because that one is all kind of upbeat horror and has a lot of humor in it, and it's just a more fun movie. So, and then Into the Forest, the next one we're going to do is going to be very, very dark. So we have a good contrast to see, exactly who people like. I just know that the feedback from this movie, this is probably people's least favorite scene, as far as like the people who, were engaged in, as far as like distribution companies were.
Yeah, I think, again, it's always a tough line to judge on where it's at, because I can see how it takes people out of it, but again, like I said, I absolutely love it. So you always have to kind of find an audience with that. So from there we kind of have another downbeat scene. I think one of the major issues with these downbeat scenes, basically every time they regroup, it's the same thing. We just need to stay inside here, we're safe in here, we're fine in here, that's all we need to do. And since that was kind of the major, if I had to point to a plot, I would say that's the major plot, is essentially that they have to stay inside the cabin and they're safe. So I think, really to kind of highlight it quickly with these downbeats, because, Brad again is like, we just need to wait them out. Once we get to the daylight, we'll be fine. Everything will be okay. We just need to wait here. It's just the same stuff. It's just Sonny arguing that like, Brad, you're crazy. And it's just Brad gaslighting. So you want to talk real quickly about how like in these downbeats, I think they suffer because again, our plot is so basic that we kind of get through it the first time we mention it.
Yeah, I think the problem with this movie from here on out is like, what do you have them do? Like their goals are everything's locked up so they could just stay there and be fine. You have a scene of Carl trying to break through the window, which you can't do. So your whole like movie progression from this movie or this point forward is, hey, all they gotta do is stay put. So you can't really raise the stakes of the movie up until they, bring the gas canisters out to burn them alive. But I think we probably have about 15 minutes, 10 minutes before that. So it's them trying to get in, Carl smashing the window, them saying they're going to go to the car. So I mean, it's not horrible, but like, how many times can you say, "Hey, listen, we just got to stay here. No matter what happens, we just got to stay here." I think we have to kind of figure out how we want to progress this. Like, if we're going to do this movie again, how we're going to progress it from this point forward. Obviously, you have the car. Obviously, they could stay in the house. The gas cans is a tool for the masked men to use. The hammer was a tool for the masked men to use. But I don't know if you need like a scene where he's like searching for weapons. I think we do. They actually go through the kitchen stuff to get knives, but like maybe a gun or something. Or maybe there's like something in the shed that they can use. I don't know. I feel like this needs to have a better structure and progression point that makes sense. And I think that this is kind of lacking because with each new thing, it's just them arguing again, which kind of takes you out of it. So maybe at this point, I'd have the masked maybe try and burn the house down earlier. I think would be like the best way to do it. And then that just raises the stakes for them. And then, you just kind of amp it up again. But I don't know. I mean, like, honestly, looking back on it, I don't know what you would do because really they've achieved their goal. They're sitting in the house. They're fine. And I'm trying to remember what they did in Strangers. I think they just go out in the shed or they try and leave. And nobody had a problem with those people just kind of walking around looking at them. They didn't even have bulletproof windows. So I don't know. It's something this would definitely be the issues I have as far as like this sequence. How do we get them out of the cabin? Like what is their motivation for getting out of the cabin would be the biggest issue I have as far as like this screenplay.
Yeah, I mean, I can see, again, when you have those gaps in kind of the downbeat areas, it's gonna be your downbeats are gonna be the ones that suffer. So yeah, again, a lot of hey, how do we get in the cabin? Oh, we just gotta stay safe and then we'll be good to go. So we have that, but then we have a scene that I think was really good. I remember when you added it in there, him basically walking up trying to reason with the masked man, and the masked man takes his mask off. That's a scene that got a lot of people to kind of be like, oh wow, that's cool. And it adds the stakes because again, I think the hardest thing with this movie is you can't really clearly identify the stakes. There's no Jake by the lake to some degree. I mean, you kind of have Brad explaining it, but since we don't have other additional characters, you can't really increase the stakes without the masked men, and the masked men aren't really talking. So that's kind of the best way for the masked men to actually do something. So what are your thoughts on just, adding stakes as the masked men?
I really like this scene. I think this scene should have just been done earlier and you would have been fine. Especially right after Joe. I think it would have been a good spot. We had them arguing for a while, but I think, this is just pushing the plot forward in a clever way. So, like, this is the first time we're actually doing something clever because you have the masked men say, "Look, I want the girl." That's cool. So you're without dialogue, you're showing the audience that Sonny is the target, and it's like, all right, well, what do they want to do with Sonny? And then that's when Brad goes to the guy. He's like, listen, like, we can get you out of here. Like, I didn't see your faces. We don't, we can just leave. Just let us out. We know you might have got caught up in something bad. And he's like, no, like, just takes his mask off. Once again, no dialogue, just showing the audience that he doesn't give a shit if Brad sees his face because he's going to kill Brad. So the implications are he wants to kill Sonny and he wants to kill Brad. We did this without dialogue. So I'd say this is some of the first time we're doing stuff that's like a little bit next level as far as like filmmaking. I don't know if it was intentional or not. Maybe we just got lucky, but this is kind of the stuff you have to do with your scripts, just to give them that extra spice. And anytime you can have your actors and your movie move forward with limited dialogue, be just because people just don't want to be told what's going on. I think that's like the biggest peeve. And I was like watching something on, what is good dialogue versus bad dialogue, and a lot of times bad dialogue is very on the nose, very like, these masked men are trying to kill us. Well, yeah, no shit. And like, we have a lot of that in this movie, and I think that's where they're like, "Oh, this is bad acting." It's not bad acting, it's bad dialogue, it's a bad script that I wrote. Um, but you have to kinda know that in order to kind of avoid that stuff, and at this point, I was just like, "Hey, let's make a movie and just get this uploaded and see if we could, like, up our production value." Um, but I think these 2 scenes were actually really good. The slamming the "We Want the Girl" and the him taking off the mask were solid scenes that moved the movie forward and were clever and were unique, as opposed to being like, "What do you want?" And the guy's like, "I want Sonny." And he's like, "Well, you can't see our faces." And he's like, "I don't care. Look, here's my face." Like, come on. So I think we did a good job. I think these two were some wins that we got from this movie.
Definitely agree. I mean, again, not easy to establish this without a non-talking villain or characters or anything. So then you have them again, and guess what? They do the same thing. Well, safe in here, we're safe in here. And then they start knocking on all the doors and everything. And we give them a timer of 5 minutes. And I mean, honestly, this is really the only stakes the masked men have is the gasoline scene. I remember the gasoline scene was actually one of the first scenes I had sent you, like more in the rough draft one. I remember you being like, damn. And I was like, is that bad or good? Because you can never really quietly tell after you edit it for so long. But I would say the whole gas montage, burning it down, we do have the torch, which is one of the greatest things ever, which almost didn't exist because you thought I couldn't pull it off. But look at me go. Right there's Carl. I think it's great. I mean, I think it establishes the stakes there. You finally remove the one plot, we stay here. No, we can't stay here. So I mean, I think of all of the scenes, the whole gas burning montage is probably one of the best that we have in the Girl in Cabin 13.
Yeah, that was like, when you're making these movies, every once in a while you'll get something you're like, all right, this is pretty good. That was the gas burning scene. I think it was really cool. We had enough coverage to shoot it around. We wanted was it "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor," or there's like a really good song on there, but obviously we
Rob
can't use that.
Zombie,
Yeah, a little Rob Zombie in there.
Dracula.
And it was cool. Like it looked good. So something we can use again. Torches look good. Everything looks good. The gas it looks cool. And I loved that. I thought it was really good. Now you've amped up the stakes exponentially, which is like what this movie needed. Just needed a kick in the balls. We gave it a kick in the balls, and now this movie's really cranking. So really, honestly, from here on out, it needs a little bit better production value, but like this last sequence heading into this climax, because now we're gonna have the Jake by the lake with the two characters talking and explaining what's going on. Then we're gonna get them out of the cabin. From this scene all the way through the rest of the movie is very, very well paced, and it's very, very good. Um, you just have to know how to get there.
Yeah, I was about to go into, from this scene on, I think we kind of pick up the action a lot. So you have them, they shut the doors, or right now the big one is, okay, how do we get out here? So then Brad redeems himself, in my opinion. He tries to get their attention. You have Chloe running out there. She does the classic horror move where she can't get to the car in time, so she drops the keys. She attacks Carl. Pretty classic, but I think again it does the trick. So do you have any thoughts on like that running one? Again, I think it works. Just what else are you really gonna do? I think you have it built up there. He drops it. It's kind of a good sequence. And at least she attempts there, because a lot of people are like, I'd just leave, and then you have Carl popping the tire to basically cement one of their options.
Yeah, I thought it was solid. The knee kick was like a little rough. We just didn't have a good take of that. But anytime you do stunts, like it's just hard. I remember we went to like a film festival, and they're like, "Well, what did she do to him?" And I was like, "Ah, shit." Um, but she gets kicked in the nuts, or he kicks her. She kicks him in the nuts, to get him to drop the keys. It's not bad. It's not good, but it addresses the plot point. Get in the car. Um, so I don't think it's terrible. There's motion. The thing with Carl was good, or not the scene with Carl, the scene with Brad where he's like trying to get their attention. So I think it's solid. Once again, like it's not boring. Is it shot really well? No, I kind of dropped the ball on that, but it's engaging. Like you're cheering for her. I don't know. I really wanted it to be like when she first stepped outside, it was like, oh my God, like she's gonna die, or there's just a lot of tension when she first steps outside. Like the house is her safe zone. And that just never really clicked. And I don't really know why. It's probably just because of this entire movie. But I think that would be a really cool moment if we really were better at what we were doing, is when she first leaves the cabin and knows those people are out there lurking around, and when they actually step for the first time into the cabin. I think those are two really cool moments, and I think both are just very watered down. Um, so a lot of tomato paste on those guys, but I mean, it's not boring. I think it did well. So, 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it really is one of those things where, like, we're not reinventing the wheel with some of these scenes. I think it did what it needed to do. I will say it is your filming, because we did have really good stunts in the sense that there were a few connections there that I fully blame your cinematography on that. So we have that issue. They get back to the house. And then we have our hand chopping scene, which is basically one of the big this was one of the big scenes for just kind of the special effects. I like how the chopping came out. We got really, really lucky because like basically one was usable. If you want to talk about special effects, hand chopping. And I think one of the big ones is, I remember I made a big deal about how you have to show that there's cloth in the door to give them a reason to get in, and I don't think anyone ever paid attention to that. So what are your kind of thoughts on that scene? Special effects in general.
Yeah, I mean, special effects is tough because not only do you have to, find someone who knows what they're doing, you have to do pre-production on this stuff to make sure it's what you want, but you have to do pre-production to make sure you know how to shoot it. So it's almost like when I'm shooting, I'm the DP, I have to work to get the best angles because this is obviously a fake hand, but we have to make it look good. And we just never got a lot of pre-production done with the special effects person on this one, so it was very difficult to, pull it off, and we were already running against the clock, and nothing was working. It just wasn't staying at the door. It didn't look good. I mean, I heavily color corrected this to get it to look anywhere near human hands. But I mean, it worked. It turned out. I think that the loud sound really kind of got it going. But I mean, if you're doing special effects, you got to find someone who knows what they're doing, and you both have to do pre-production, and they got to come on the set and be able to work under pressure. Because it's one thing to, do this stuff in pre-production where you have so much time and you can just go and you're like, all right, tonight we're just going to chop the fingers off. When you're on set, it's a whole nother beast where it's like, you don't know when you're going to need to do this scene. And all of a sudden it's like, you got to have your stuff ready. You got to go, and you have an hour to get this done. And if we don't get in an hour, we're falling behind. And usually at this point in the shoot, we're already behind, way more than we should be. So we can create a very chaotic environment very, very quickly if you don't have, your shit together. The way that you do this, to overcome this issue, is do your special effects stuff first. So you don't have that. You don't have all the pile up and the stuff that you've missed like lingering in the back of your mind. You can give the beginning of the shoot as much attention as you want because you have that luxury of time of you can pick up speed later on because you still have more days, and also just pre-production. And I think those are the two things. We did a much better job in Murder House. We scheduled all the special effects earlier in the shoot, did a lot of pre-production on the stuff, and I think it turned out a lot better. I think it was just a much better production, much, much smoother, and the special effects turned out much, much better.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. You know, it's one of those things, and it's just the hard element of filmmaking, getting everyone together. So I would say at this point, we're coming in at the basically hour and 5 minute mark. So this is when things kind of go ham. So what's happening now is they are able to get inside. So then Brad basically has to attack, has what has been claimed his best line of the movie, which is "Eat shit, smooth brain." So he attacks someone, then he gets knifed. Again, special effects a little bit lacking in that area, but I think it works for him. And Sonny gets away. So you want to talk about like kind of the action scene here, because I really do think, you know, we did a great job and kind of from this point on in the movie. So with that being said, you know, what do you feel like with the them breaking in, them being able to basically overcome Stewart, and then, you know, the whole scene there? Because I think, you know, overall it's good. I think he did a great job with his screams. I remember being Carl and doing that. I was like, this is pretty intense, man.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. I just wish that like them first stepping into the cabin would have had more impact. I think it would have been cooler. But I thought that the stab in the eye turned out really well. It looked really good, and him getting like taken to the ground and gutted was really good. Like I think we scrapped a little bit of it together. It was kind of janky, but it turned out really, really well. So I definitely think that this is just, you know, a great little sequence, really from the start of the gas can stuff all the way through the rest of this movie is really, really well done. I think the issues lie in the beginning part of this movie, but I think because even the murder house and the shapeshifter, I think we're getting really good at climaxes and getting up to that pace. I still think we really suffer in the first half of the movies just to get these things going. So I'm really excited to do, you know, the Into the Forest 2.0 because I've cut all that stuff out. This is just like you're hopping on this train and we are just going full steam ahead to honestly try and make a movie, you know, like this last 20, 25 minutes of this movie for an hour and a half would be the goal. And then we can calibrate and try and figure out how do we, you know, slow it down just a little bit. But I mean, the climax is now you're starting to see us get much better at building these building the climaxes and making sure the audience understands, you know, the climax. Because before all this happened, they had Chloe and or Brad and Sonny had a scene, you know, outside by the steps explaining exactly what's going to happen. You know, she's going to try and get the car keys. And, you know, if anything happens, like she runs in the woods, like you just keep going, like this is what's going to happen. Lo and behold, something happens. Brad gets gutted and she's in the woods. And so, you know, her goal now is to get to, I think it was like a road or something. And I think it's just, you know, it's 25 minutes of just almost pure action. I think it's really well done.
Yeah, so hopping into that scene, I mean, basically, we're kind of taking everything we learned from the what's worked in the Hateful Eight, which is woods are scary, do them at night, having them walk around. So I mean, you can basically see the intro of you know, Gone even as kind of like a similar one there. But we have walking around, then we have a really good head smashing scene with Chloe. And one thing to talk about for this one, we picked this entire climax up. So I think one of the big things, you know, we had the head smashing scene, we had wandering around with the scenes that we did have, and then we had Carl getting shot at the end. All of those things that we picked up, all of them that we practiced, and I think it's no wonder that they all really hit. So do you want to talk about again having the practice, having special effects? It's like a mini thing that you really want to look at making sure that you're doing.
Yeah, no, I mean, we had a whole night to focus on this climax. I think the climax is like 10, 15 minutes long. So, you know, for the people saying you got to do 7 days to shoot a short, like, come on here. Like, you got to go a little bit faster than that. So we did about 15 minutes of footage in one night. And this started maybe at like 8 p.m. And I think we wrapped by like 3 or 4. So it was still a long night, but we got a lot done. But we had practiced this before. We practiced that head smash. We practiced the brain splatter thing. And I had experience of, you know, shooting stuff in the woods. We did Into the Forest. We did Gone, which Kel mentioned before. So, and shooting the woods is like the easiest stuff ever because nobody knows where you are. That whole sequence was shot in like this really tiny backyard forest thing. And I was really concerned that people would be able to see not only like the other surrounding houses, but like understand, like be able to see some trees or something and be like, yo, this, you were just right past that tree. Cause we literally had Chloe run like down maybe 20 feet, stop, and then hug a tree so I get a close up, and then run another 20 feet in the other direction. I had to do that like 8 or 10 times. And I just took like the best looking ones and kind of chopped them all together. So, use what's free, and that was free at the time. So, I thought it was good though. I think that climax is really good. I think that was our best climax. I don't know if Murder House is better. I'd probably say Murder House is better. But to see the improvement is really good. I think even the Shapeshifter, those are three really solid climaxes that we had in a row, which is really good because you got to have a good climax. You just watch like Morgan Estate and The Devil in the Room, and you just feel let down, especially if you're giving extra time. Like, it's effort to watch this movie. I'm like, oh man, this movie suffers by so many problems, but I really want to see like where they go with it. And then it's just like this limp noodle climax. Like, oh dude, I'm gonna give that thing a 1 star. So climax needs to be important. And this is a thing that we learned. If you can give your climax one whole day, do it, because you will get a much better climax.
Yeah, no, I completely agree in that sense of, if you can focus in on those roles and have it kind of planned out, you're going to get much better results. And if you look at like The Devil in the Room and The Morgan Estate, one of the biggest issues that we had with those movies is we ran out of time and the climaxes were rushed. So the last thing we have is a nice little epilogue. And now, still for me, I feel like this plot really makes no sense in the intro. Like, because again, those Instagram people aren't linked directly to the actual people. That's Carl. Again, I know you like to be like, maybe it is, maybe they're not.
How do you know? How do you know that? How do you
Because
know that? You
we
don't know
said
that.
that. We said that. We said
No.
that before we wrote it. So they're not linked. And then the person at the end isn't linked. So it makes no sense whatsoever. And I was like, this is so weird. Why are you doing this? And you know what? People love it. So it's basically just a little wrap up that shows Sonny's still in danger or whatnot. But I think it's important to have epilogues. I mean, I guess. I was completely against this scene, but people loved it. People thought it was really good. I feel like we've learned our lesson a little bit with it. So what would you say kind of your thoughts are on the epilogue scene?
It's good. It wraps everything up. You come full circle. Now I'm thinking about it, I think Shapeshifter might need an epilogue scene. I just don't know what we do. But yeah, no, I think people like it. It ties everything together, or in this case, it does not. It does not tie anything together. People like the opportunity of a sequel. And it gives it just a little bit of room to breathe. I think that's like the main thing. The biggest issue is like, what happens to Stewart? Like people are bringing up, like, is he still alive or not? So I guess we could have like probably hinted at like a GoFundMe page for her dead boyfriend or something. Would have been like something she could have had on the laptop. Because really, she's just narrating to her viewers. And I wanted to make it seem like, oh, she like learned her lesson. That was really the whole point of this epilogue, was like, I learned my lesson. I'm getting off social media. For whatever reason, I was really trying to, shit on social media with this movie. But really, it doesn't come across like that at all. And people just like that she's still stalked and we can get a Girl in Cabin 14 movie. So that's fine. I'll take it as a win. But yeah, I would say epilogue, people like them. I think it's a nice little way to tie things together if you can. Lets the movie breathe a little bit, gives you a couple extra minutes of runtime.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I think it is something, again, I don't get it, but hey, it works. So that goes ahead and that wraps it up. I think, again, to recap with Girl in Cabin 13, simple, clean, gets the job done, very effective, structures there, really just kind of, again, speeding it up. So I mean, I think the second half's pretty good. Like, I wouldn't really change most of anything in the second half. I think we just need in the first half to speed it up a little bit more. But if you just had, more special effects for each one of the masked men, maybe, getting off in a more spectacular way than just a fire poker to the eye, that would probably be the only thing I look at. Well, what are your thoughts on kind of the second half of the movie?
Yeah, no, the second half is good. I think it's just getting to the second half that's the most important part. I think the first half is we do everything right, we just don't do it very well. And I think it's slow, it's boring. There's some stuff we miss on some pop scares in the first half, but man, if you can get to this like this juice and spice of the movie, which is like really probably say like after the masked men break off with their knives, it would have been a much better movie. I think you could do that. I definitely think there's 20 minutes in that first half of the movie that could have been cut or changed. But I mean, for the first time, this climax is great. That last couple sequences is great. The gas can stuff was great. And it showed like the feedback on this one was so much better. And this was the first time we hit like mass appeal. Like we weren't just getting, our friends and family to review the movie or just like the people who are searching for indie movies. We were getting like a lot of people to review this. And I think that's like something that a lot of filmmakers take for granted. They're like, "Oh, I have like, 12 really good reviews." Well, 12 is not like mass market, man. You got to be getting up there, around the 200-300 range. That's when you really can take that feedback because you're gonna have your outliers. Like when I watch indie movies, I give them all 5 stars just because like I understand how difficult this process is. And there's other people out there. But I think once you start to hit that mass market and your movies are next to big time movies on Amazon and IMDb and Tubi and all the other platforms that we're on, I think that starts to the feedback is more valuable because those people are going to be more critical because they've only seen movies that are $5 million and up. I mean, people are saying that like Get Out was an indie movie. That's like, oh, come on, guys. Like that was 10, 15 million bucks. So I think that's like a where you want to get to. And I think that was the first time we actually got there with this movie. Gave us the feedback has been absolutely phenomenal. And like I said, I'm taking all that feedback. We take that feedback, we put it in our next movie and every single movie that we're gonna make from here on out. But it allows us like to look back on this movie. If I ever want to do a Girl in Cabin 14, I know where to fix it. And that's probably the first half, but I really like the second half. I thought we executed it really well. I thought the vision was good. Small little things need to get better. And I think production value could have been better. I could have shot it better. But for the most part, this was a milestone movie. I'm super proud of it. Super proud of everyone who worked on this movie. And we got rewarded with, a movie that did very, very well with distribution.
Yeah, no, I really do agree. A lot of those things came together, and it's just a better understanding, what the product is. And again, massive milestone in the DBS history. So you can go ahead, you can take a look at The Girl in Cabin 13 for free on Tubi. You can take a look at The Haunting of the Murder House as well. And then also Into the Forest. Be sure to take a look at our Discord channel as well, too, if you want to be part of the action, because we make movies for our fans with our fans. And until then, have a good one.